My guest today has 4 decades of experience in the FMCG industry. He's held board positions, he's had absolutely the top leadership roles in leading global organizations. He's worked in multiple geographies and he has had the opportunity to lead teams to success in difficult circumstances. Suresh joined Nestle in 1999 and he began his career as a management trainee with Hindustan Unilever. In Unilever, he held numerous positions of increasing responsibility in sales, marketing, general management. He's also worked with Colgate Palmolive in India. He's a very decorated, CEO, I must say. Whenever I've met him, he wins hearts with poetry. And, he, of course, is absolutely brilliant at being, able to quote Kabir Dohas. So I'm hoping that happens for us today. My guest today is Suresh Narayanan. He's a chairman and managing director for Nestle India Limited, and I welcome him to the BE CXO Lounge. Welcome, Suresh.
Thank you, Deepali. Thank you very much for having me.
Suresh, my first question to you. In the 4 decades of experience, is there anything that you have not done?
Deepali, I'll be very immodest if I say that I've done everything. I think I've been truly blessed to have numerous opportunities, difficult ones, not so difficult ones, across different parts of the world. And what I have been truly blessed with is to work with excellent people, to work with truly dedicated people. And I have been inspired by every assignment and every geography that I've been in.
The whole purpose of why we've looked at doing the interviews with the CEOs for brand equity is because we've heard very often from the CMOs, from the ad gurus, from the marketing services partners, but we want to have a dialogue with the CEOs because they are the ones who ultimately steer the company to success. And we want to understand, what are your expectations therefore from the marketing organization. So let me just give a brief pause here to tell you that the whole marketing, domain has changed considerably in the last few years. And digital transformation is at the heart of, the change that has happened. And that's got accelerated by COVID. So, given this backdrop, Suresh, and you've been in the business for so many years, how have you seen the KPIs or OKRs, whatever people want to call it, change, from the marketing teams? What has been your observation?
Look, I think Deepali, you have kind of outlined it very correctly. The whole consumer landscape and the access to the consumer landscape has dramatically changed with the coming in of digital. The country is on the cusp of reaching 1 billion internet connections by 2025. It has got more than 400 million Facebook connections. It's got more than 500 million WhatsApp connections. It's got very large numbers of other social media platforms. The revolution today is of video, voice, and vernacular. And in fact, voice searches are increasing by something like 250%, as I was informed. And for Google search, this is the second largest market in the world for them. So I think the whole role of marketing has changed, and the role of whether you call them chief marketing officers or marketing managers or whatever designation you give them, I think there are three things that have become extremely important. Firstly is anticipation. You see, there is so much of change that is around us that the steady state marketing of yesterday, where you took a consumer insight and translated it into a brand proposition and into an actual brand, is now gone, where you literally think on your feet. So anticipation has become very important. Articulation, how do you articulate the proposition, has become very important because consumer segments on digital are able to give you real-time feedback. In my good old days as a brand manager, you would get a feedback, once every 3 months, or whenever Nielsen or whenever one of the agencies, IMRB or whoever you commission. Today it's all online. You get feedback immediately. So articulation is very, very important. And I think that the third most important characteristic is the ability to be constantly agile. I think anticipation, articulation, and agility have become the bywords in the marketing profession, which really means that it moves from seeking marketing budgets to delivering on the equity of brands, both long term and short term, a sharper focus on return on investment. Let's remember that we are all in very competitive spaces. Every decimal point of market share is fought for. So every rupee that is spent is that much more important. And finally, the prize goes to those who are able to produce sustainable and competitively advantaged propositions continuously. And therefore, I believe that the marketing is clearly front and center in the organization, but its role and responsibility has been completely redefined and put on its head with the digital revolution that is upon us.
And would you therefore say that it's become tougher?
Well, most certainly it has become tougher. I think it is no longer it's the ability today, Deepali, of not just knowing the dots, but of connecting the dots through multiple means. Whether it is understanding the digital footprint of the consumer, whether it is using anthropology, whether it is using extensive social science research, whether it is geopolitics, the impact of all of this on the consumer journey is very important. And therefore, a marketeer has to keep all his senses completely agile at any point in time to be successful. So it's vastly more competitive, it's more difficult, and I dare say that for a CMO or for a marketing head or for whatever you call him, it's probably one of the most challenging jobs in the company.
That's good to hear, and I'm sure the audience, will feel very good because a lot of the BE audience are the marketing folks. However, I think the question therefore is that if I, as a marketer, have to be more agile, more connected, more digitally savvy, is there something that you recommend people do to learn better? Or is it something that you tell to your HR teams or to your, senior professionals in marketing? Have you looked at the skills differently now that you look for when you're hiring marketing folks?
You're right, Dipali. I think the skill sets are very different. Firstly, between, let's say, 10, 15 years ago and today, digital knowledge, digital appreciation, and digital capability is an absolute essential of every marketer. So I don't even, earlier there was a time when you had digital agencies. So you had these people coming and ticking the box for you. Today, the ticking the box is gone. You begin with digital. You'll start with the digital footprint of the consumer and then work yourself backwards into the brand proposition and then into whatever you seek to offer. So that is becoming very important. Secondly, so digital skill and digital capability is definitely extremely important. Secondly, is the ability to connect diverse data and to think in different contexts. You see, the context of urban India, the context of Bharat is very different. We are producing largely marketeers, and I can also accuse myself of having encouraged that. We are producing marketeers for India. We have not successfully produced a cohort of marketeers for Bharat. Bharat has the same aspiration, the same heartbeat in terms of what they expect, but they have a different articulation and they've got a different availability index and an affordability index as compared to India. And I think the bridge between India and Bharat, if it is done by really agile marketeers, can be the pot of gold for some companies seeking to establish their credentials.
You give a very, very interesting thought, and if I were to extend it further, it's almost like, we need to have brand managers for different cohorts. I mean, in the good old days, we had geographies, and you said, you have somebody for Finland and somebody for Spain and somebody for Italy, because there was a homogeneous cohort of audience by ethnicity over there. But, now I think the cohort of, let's say, absolutely rural and then semi-urban, and then, within urban India, the way socioeconomic group is, I think what you've said is very insightful. Therefore, for me, at least, to say that, a marketer needs to transition. But I think that gives rise to the second question. Do you anticipate or see that the organization structure within marketing therefore needs to change to cater to India and Bharat?
Look, I think we have done or we have started that journey in within Nestle by what we call creating 15 clusters. Clusters are really based on geography, category, brand, SKU, media habits, per capita income, market potential, etc. All put together. Each of these clusters are very different. So therefore, the capabilities that people have, both in terms of the digital connect, the use of data analytics, the use of brand propositions, SKUs, route to market, everything is different. So from an aggregated India, in my time, Deepali, many years ago, we had what was called the spray and pray model.
Yes.
So you took a proposition, you just threw it across the country, and wherever it stuck, either because of accident, design, or the interpret sales manager who made it happen, that became a key market for you, and that's how you developed it. Today, the spray and pray model is firstly vastly expensive and much too slow. Therefore, you have to look at a more granular network of decentralization. So really, core central brand proposition, sustainability, and commercial proposition translated into regional outcomes, into regional execution, and making it happen in vernacular. So the brand manager who is speaking all the time in English has to now understand Malayalam and Bhojpuri in the same breath. And that's not an easy one. That's not an easy one.
My other observation is that the marketer has to be very data savvy, and yet the burden of innovation, the burden of insight discovery, the softer aspect, as I call it, both have to be very high notch, at a high degree, for a marketer. And I know that you love speaking on culture and learning and leadership. Demystify for the young marketers as to how do you ensure that you develop both these senses very well.
Look, I think firstly, as a leader or as a business leader or as a marketer, firstly, you have to have your feet on the ground. I think, far too often we have these opinions about ourselves and about the world around us that is not born with reality. So really put your feet on the ground and put your ears to the ground if possible as well, and really listen to the heartbeat of India. And I think it's so many exciting possibilities are there in this heartbeat of India that it'll go on for decades and centuries probably. That's number one. Number two is really understand the marketplace. I keep telling this to marketers. My own background, I spent a lot of time in managing channels and sales. So I love to go on market visits. I love to talk to the sales folks. I love to talk to distributors. Why do I do that? Because that gives me the sense, the smell of what is happening in a shop. I think that sense is today going. Digital data, yes. Analytics, yes. But nothing like walking the streets and understanding the way in which the Kirana store and the Bania and the shopkeeper and whoever you call him thinks, because their way of thinking is also evolving over a period of time. And I think that's a second piece that is important. Third piece is the curiosity to connect the dots. Evidences can be coming from different parts and in different spheres. What are people watching on OTT today? How are people traveling by trains? How are people looking at the whole concept of development and growth of this country? How are people looking at jobs? How are people looking at the workplace? All of this needs to be connected by the marketeer into propositions and opportunities. I mean, I'm talking of this because I'm in the food space. So therefore, to me, these are important characteristics. I'm sure for every industry, they will have their own touch points.
Yes.
So the multiplicity of touch points and the capability of imbibing and of articulating propositions is becoming the name of the game. So it's not necessarily on which institute of management you got your degree from, or whether you at all got a degree,
Yes.
right? In business management or in whatever, but more in these few elements of curiosity, of professionalism, and of translation, and above all of keeping your feet on the ground.
So if I were to ask you, saying which are the other brands or companies or organizations in the last 5 or 6 years that you think that, FMCG marketers can learn from, then which names and why do they come to your mind?
Look, I think I would say that I really admire some of these startups that have come into this country. The whole UPI explosion that has taken place, the technology explosion that has taken place, people who are working on sustainability projects, some of the new initiatives in the foods category are all inspiration points. These are all young people who have identified a few pain points for consumers or a few concern points for consumers, worked on it assiduously, and really made a reasonable success of it. And those who have based their philosophy on long-term sustainability and business robustness, and less on valuations, and getting into that short-term kind of attractive propositions that they see, are going to be the victors of this marketplace. So I think the ability of large organizations to think small, and the ability of small startups to think big, will define the next generation of entrepreneurs and managers in this country.
Wonderful. And since you yourself brought in this whole example of, startups need to think big and bigger companies perhaps need to think nimble. I'm not using the word small, but I think nimble. Brings me the question of culture, which I also know is very close to your heart. How do you go about changing the culture and ensure that a large organization such as yours, is nimble in the market and is competing, with all kinds of competition that's coming in? And number two, also learning from, in a very agile fashion, what is happening inside, other organizations. How do you build that culture, Suresh?
When you put purpose, ethics, and a leadership that seeks to practice it every single day, you have the beginnings of a great culture. And what is that culture that we talk about? Culture is that unspoken language that gets triggered at all times when the leader is not looking at you. When the leader is looking at you and the leader is telling you X, Y, and Z, that's not culture, that's taking orders. But when you do it yourself, and you act in a manner that is ethical, sincere, honest, transparent, and in the best interest of whichever stakeholder you are serving, I think that is the beginnings of a great culture. So the culture demands a lot of work, a lot of attention. It demands the leader and the leadership of the organization walking the talk. It demands a lot of keeping your feet on the ground. But above all, it demands a lot of humility. Humility for me is the capacity to understand and appreciate a little startup who probably has got a germ of an idea that can be outstanding, and say, bravo, young man, well done. Because that is what builds organizations for the future. And I believe that all of us have started. I mean, Nestle started as a startup by Henri Nestle, a many-time entrepreneur, 160 years ago. So I think he started with a single product, and then it went on to be the world's biggest consumer products company. But everybody starts small, and I think if you have that humility and that perspective to to work on initiatives, to give people the leeway, allow them to experiment, allow them to fail. I mean, I tell my people, and some practice it, some are still a little uncertain, that it's okay to fail, so long as you don't, so long as you don't blow up the whole company. I mean, that is dangerous. But so long as you are able to learn from failing to succeed will lead you to succeed, to make you succeed for the future. And I think that's something that that organizations, I do hope, build in greater measure in the exciting India that is ahead.
Yeah. And when you were talking about the humility, I think so today you've not quoted a doha, but I want to quote one, which is, बुरा जो देखन मैं चला बुरा न मिला कोई जो मन खोजा आपना मुझसे बुरा न कोई. So I think that I think when you talk about humility is what is the most interesting thing for me. But Suresh, in business we've also got to be aggressive. We've got to be competitive. And there are roles where we say we need a shark there. So how do you marry this, this appreciation, respectfulness, humility, and then there are targets to be achieved and you need to be aggressive and, assertive. How do you marry these two things inside an organization?
I honestly believe, successful organizations or successful leaders are not those who trumpet themselves and shout out their vision and start shaking everyone in the organization with a lot of macho behavior that is unbecoming of them and unbecoming of the organization. I've always believed that articulating a simple, clear vision, a crystal clear strategy, where there is something in it for the participant and something in it for individuals, where there is a longer term goal that I'm able to put forward for my people, along with a culture that empowers, enables, that treats them with respect, is a formula for victory, is a formula for being able to do whatever you have to do. But this puts it in a different context of the Doha, Deepali. And I'll quote back to you one from Kabir. Kabir said this many years ago, and he said, "Dheere dheere se mana, dheere sab kuch hoy, mali siiche sau gada, ritu aaye phal hoy." Everything in nature takes time. You have to allow it time. Culture takes time. Organizations take time. Leaders take time. And maturity happens not by pouring 100 pots of water on the seed, but for waiting for spring for the fruit to come. I think if entrepreneurs, if people who say that they are in a hurry, just spend a few days, a few hours, a few years in trying to hone their skills at how to run organizations, I think we will have vastly more well-defined entrepreneurships and companies in this country. We have a great number of very respectful companies. I mean, look at companies like the Tatas, for example. These are not happened in a year. They have happened over centuries. And I think this is what the longevity of an organization is based on: the competence, on the clarity, on the capability, and on the culture. And if we want to build companies, that's how we have to do it.
To round this off, I think it's been a wonderful interaction where you have spoken about sustainability, agility, learning, digital transformation, Bharat versus India, and the way you're running your organization. My last two questions to you are once again going back to measurement, which is that if you had the opportunity of rewriting the KPIs that marketing teams have today, what are the 2 or 3 things that you would add, keeping the future in mind? So that's my one question to you. And the second question to you is that I do want you to end this whole interview today with a message from your side in the form of a doha, another one. So I think these are my 2 last requests to you before we round this.
And I think a real pleasure chatting with you, Deepali. I think the 2 imperatives that I would now include in the revised context for marketers. Number 1 is how embedded is sustainability in the marketing propositions that they're talking about. Whether it's the environment, whether it is on the water, on energy, on climate change, how much and how deep are we thinking about it? This is not going to happen by simply taking targets and objectives. This is going to happen by full value chain thinking, from product concept to the final execution on the shelf. I think this is something that I would really urge. The second one is, we are all under pressure as companies, to show short-term results. But I think a good marketer or a longer-term thinking marketer thinks about building long-term equity for the brand. Yes. And really measures around long-term equity for the brand is going to be critical. I mean, we have seen it as a company. The reason why a Maggi, a Nescafe, a Kit Kat, or a Milkmaid stands the test of time despite the fact that they've been around for years is because they still resonate and reverberate and are meaningful to consumers. And that is because of the long-term equity building of brands that have been done. So I think it's important that they build in this into their matrix in whatever measurement format that organizations use. And look, I would my leadership message would really be a doha that comes to my mind. It is bada hua to kya hua, jaise ped khajur, panchi ko chhaya nahi, phal lage ati dur. What is the point of being a leader when you are so far away up in the sky, when even the birds cannot seek shelter, and where even the dead is so far away from anybody on the ground? So I think that is what I believe a leader should be. I try to practice it as best as I can. I'm still learning, Deepali, after 40 years. And maybe if you interview me after another 20 years, I would still be on that journey.
I promise to interview you after 20 years, Suresh. I hope we are both happy and healthy at that point of time. But I think what a wonderful session, for the audience today. I think your last remark on adding sustainability as a KPI into marketing is really new age. And I do think all organizations, need to, veer towards that. I think your comments on culture, learning, agility, and about the fact that leadership needs to walk the talk is something that most leaders talk about. But I think your awards, your organization, your teams have actually demonstrated that you do that. So I think it's fantastic to have an example such as yours, who's doing that. And I think the last bit, the conversation on marketing that we've had today, in terms of how they need to change, what are the new things entering our lives as marketers, and especially the conversation on India versus Bharat, I think is some of the most remarkable things in the interview today. Thank you, Suresh, for sparing your time and spending time with us at the BE CXO Lounge.
Thank you, Deepali. Thank you very much. As always, a pleasure talking to you. It has been a very energizing conversation, and I do hope that the contents are of some use to whoever bothers to listen to it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.